Keep watching The Politics every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Welcome to our show this Friday, and I am Robert Press, and you'll see my new title is Targeted Reporter. Here's my press credentials up, and they're brand new to 2025. And here's my target on my head right now. And the reason being the recent election. I'm sorry, hold on. I'll introduce my co-host in a few minutes, or in a minute. This is the official Board of Elections, New York City Board of Elections media ID. And it tells you, or it tells the coordinators at the poll what I can and what I can't do. The media is the only person who can film inside a poll. All right, it seems that people are trying to target me already in my own show, but this allows me to stay any amount of time I want in any poll site. Okay, not 10 minutes like one poll site coordinator said to the police officer. 10 minutes, I want him out. No, I'm there to watch to make sure everything goes proper. All right, I'm not going to stay the poll site or the person, but so that's why I am now targeted. Okay, I'm the targeted reporter because I'm the honest reporter who wants to let the people know what's going on. Unfortunately, I have to say congratulations to those who won and my condolences to those who lost. And let me introduce my co-host, Mr. Anthony Ravecchio. Please introduce yourself.
I'm not targeted, am I, Bob?
Are you hiding, Tony?
Yeah, you're targeted, man. I'm hiding. Hello, everyone. My name is Professor Anthony Ravecchio, and if I look a little further away, it's because, as Bob said, he's been targeted. I have three lives, ladies and gentlemen. My first and predominant life is that I am an income tax and financial advisor for Ravecchio Financial Services. My second life is I am an adjunct professor of personal finance at both Herbert H. Lehman College and Monroe College. My third life, which of course brings me here, is I am the founding father of a wonderful Northwest Bronx community and political organization called Northwest Bronx Democrats.
Okay, Tony, let's get right into our show. You wanted to hold off on Bionomics and get into world news. So let's see what's happening in the world. We saw that Poland had a missile shot at it, and there was claims that it was Russia, if I'm not mistaken. Did we find out who shot that missile at Poland?
Not officially, but the president of Ukraine has made statements to believe that he believes it was an accident on their side, and he's pursuing his investigation that way, but nothing official as of yet. I think the bigger concern is that whether it was by accident or whatever reason, the reason for it is because that day and 24 hours prior to that day, Putin just said, just keep bombing them. And they went through a period of 36 hours straight of just bombing.
Was there any comment?
Ukraine decided to fight back. And of course, the bigger powers that be now have a bigger concern. Do we want a segment of the world with just bombs going all up and down from both sides? Of course, something's going to go haywire, and God forbid who does it, and God forbid what it is.
Well, I mean, did our president put out a statement on that or anything else? But, we know.
No. I think everybody's waiting for Ukraine to make the official statement before anyone else does. I will say that a lot of the U.S. allies were ready to go on, what they call NATO alert. So I'm sure there'll be some decision soon, and hopefully we won't have to go into NATO alert.
Because as we mentioned offline, you told me that North Korea was testing their missiles again right over South Korea into the ocean, correct?
That is correct. As we go into another element of our new world, which is turning into a very dangerous world, yes. North Korea loves testing their missiles, and it doesn't matter what South Korea says. It doesn't matter basically what anybody says. If they
Or
want
Joe Biden,
excuse
basically.
me?
Or Joe Biden. The only one he listened to was Donald Trump.
Well, I'm not even sure if you listen to him. I mean, saying hello, getting a world's photo op just tells me he listened to him for about an hour, 2 hours. They got a photo out. Did he do any follow up with him? Well, neither really did. Although I will give Donald Trump a little bit more credit. He did try more than others.
Now, we also, the last item here, world news, is that the U.S. and China met, and the subject was Taiwan and the Ukraine and Russia. Any comments on that from you?
Well, there were a number of topics. Those were some. A lot of economic topics were also discussed. I think the United States respects China as a superpower. May not say it that way publicly, but privately treats it as such. And I do believe China feels the same way about the U.S. However, China also feels that they are our predominant power and own many other parts that are not China or close to China. So over the course of the last 5-10 years, that's been very dangerous from both the social end as well as an economic end. We used to do a lot of trading in that area up until about a year ago.
Because Russia and China share a long border, and with them going to the Ukraine, I'm surprised they haven't tried to move over a little bit into China and start a little skirmish with China.
Well, as both a U.S. Navy veteran and as a chess player, yes, you can look at a new world block, if I can call it that, being formulated. And I'm not going to speculate where the dots are being created, but the chessboard, in my opinion, looks fairly obvious as to how these dots can be created. And I'll give you one of the X factors right now. I don't know, if it's going to come up in our conversation today, but Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has played the best game in town. They have said, well, we're not going to create sports in our country. We'll just copycat the U.S., put all that money behind it, and we'll say we're part of the family. And it seems to be working perfectly. Where is the World Cup being held this year?
Yep.
Right. Well, so and it's gotten it's the same thing with Live Golf and many other sports that are now being created that way. And what's being all funneled by is being funneled by one account, and the name of that account is called the Saudi Arabia International Sports Fund, which is basically run by the prince. The same prince, the same family, may I remind everybody, that was very instrumental in 9/11. Wow. Right? So, hello, America.
Let's get into national news now before we get into Bidenomics, because there are two things that are going to affect Bidenomics after we talk about these. The Republicans are now in control of the Congress. What does that mean for President Biden, since he will no longer have a Congress and a Senate?
Well, if you're talking generally, that's a bigger answer. If we're just talking economics, because you mentioned it as Bidenomics, I think his tax the wealthy parts of his economic agenda are going to go over some strict review. I will tell you that, again, from an economic standpoint, the Donald Trump income tax return fight that has been happening in the U.S. House will now be eliminated. All the challengers for that new seat have all said, whoever wins that race, they've all said, we're dropping that case as soon as I'm the chair. So it's going to have a variety of different effects nationally. One thing I'm looking at that I think is very, very interesting is that there are many provisions in the income tax code that are getting ready to expire. And the Democratic Congress mentioned some things they were going to keep, some things they were going to change, some things they were going to increase. And all that is now changed. And the Republican leadership is made suggestions that a lot of the things that have been created in there the last couple of years, as let's call it COVID-related savings to tax to tax recipients, might be eliminated. So for the last couple of years, if you were getting your income tax stimulus coming in with your income tax refund, and therefore your refund was this much bigger, there's a very big possibility next year that you'll get your income tax refund, but that stimulus will be gone. Therefore, your refund went down.
Well, the other thing that happened with that Republican Congress is that Nancy Pelosi has announced that I'm not going to be running for the head of the Democratic County Committee or whatever. Now, would that give our local Bronx Congress people, either Richie Torres or Alessandria Ocasio-Cortez, a chance to head that Democratic org? No, what?
Not a shot in the world. Not a shot in the world.
Doesn't have a shot at AOC?
She pretty much said, without saying it, that from Brooklyn, Mr. Jeffries can have it if he wants it. And I think there's no doubt that he wants it.
And our final national news was, what was it, Wednesday night, there was an announcement by a former president that, yes, I'm going to run again in 2024. Donald Trump made that announcement. How well did it go over?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Bob, you have to help me with that question, meaning, are we talking national or are we talking economic?
No, we're talking politics first. Okay. We're not in Bidenomics yet.
Okay. Well, the announcement itself, I thought was historical. Regardless of how you feel, it was historical. Now, the after effects of that, we're finding out that he is losing a lot of old time support. If we weren't sure before, we're finding that out now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's going to be in for a tough primary. I think there will be new leaders on both sides, but especially on the Republican side, and he will be in for a tough primary fight. If he survives that, I would say all bets are off at this point. But it's way too early to even talk.
Right. I don't think he has the power he had back in 2016. All right. So we was just knocking him off. Boom, you're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. Until he got fired in 2020. Okay, so let's go into Bidenomics. What's new with our economy? The stock market seems to be going up and down again. What is the Bitcoin market completely dead, or is it still alive? What's happening?
Oh God, let's take Bitcoin first. The crypto market, as I like to call it, is now about 75% eliminated. So there's still a market for crypto. There's still an exchange, but now these exchanges are much smaller in scale, and people can still buy and sell. But now what has happened it has brought up the debate that brings us back maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, which is, what is crypto? Is it an asset? Is it a currency? Do we redefine it? Did we define it wrong? And so now all these questions are now coming up. And of course, in the financial world, that is very, very dangerous, simply because in the last 3, 4, 5 years, the United States, as well as other countries, tried to legalize it and create laws to legalize it. And now we're finding out some of those laws might have to actually change, and they might be even stricter. So there might become a point where, is it even worth having it at this point? But that's too big of a conversation.
Is Mayor Adams
now, the conversation is, what is Bitcoin, which pretty much brings us back to 7, 8 years ago.
Tony, is Mayor Adams still getting paid in Bitcoin?
As far as I'm aware of, but I did read somewhere that I think he authorized it for the first 3 months. So he jumped in, but I think I read somewhere him saying he's only gonna do it for the first 3 months.
Okay.
If he continue after that, I have no idea.
All right. So what else is happening with our economy, though?
But Bob, I'm going to share what I'm going to call the economic thought with you, as opposed to economic data, because what is happening, at least this week, in the markets is something I mentioned last week, and again, it's been the main topic, which is what is happening with interest rates. Now, we're finding out through the data that as of now, we are not in a recession. As of now, the economy is not booming. As of now, we're pretty much a ship in the ocean sailing. And that's not necessarily bad. That's not great, but it's not necessarily bad. However, we've had a wave of higher interest rates hit us. And according to recent Federal Reserve Board statements, they believe, because again, you have to remember the Federal Reserve, they do not create fiscal policy. They create monetary policy. And part of their law says you have to create this policy based on inflation, right? So we don't care what's happening in China. We don't care about, we don't care about any of that. The board's job is to worry about inflation. And inflation, for a whole other variety of reasons, has gone up very, very high. It went from an annualized rate of 2% to now an annualized rate to 10 to 12%, depending on how you want to calculate the numbers. And the Federal Reserve Board, in recent statement, has pretty much agreed with that. They've gone as far as saying, no, we're not going to stop. We're going to go higher. We're thinking of doing another 50. We might even do another 50 basis points after that, because again, and this is their words, they want to get back to the 2% level. Well, if we're not, and that's their statement. So all things now going forward, how do you get to that 2%? Well, you're going to need a tough combination of fiscal and monetary policy. If we already know monetary policy is going up, they signaled that, and we're just on a floating ship, which is okay, right? But it's just floating.
The water is rising.
That this next tidal wave is going to come at us. That means the boat has to go faster.
Now,
so how does the boat go faster? That's through Congress. That's through fiscal policy. They have to create any combination of laws to make the boat go faster.
In the past, many years ago, there was 14% inflation. Is there any chance of having 14% interest rates? Is there any chance that the interest rates at the banks will go into double digits?
I would say no. But I would say for the next 6 months, you could probably find some real sweet savings instruments.
Because I'm speaking to a couple of real estate brokers there, they're saying that interest rates are killing them in selling houses. People can't afford the interest rates. Is that true?
Oh, sure. I have met with several clients the last couple of weeks that are in that what I call quagmire. The quagmire being that real estate prices have gone down very dramatically, and everybody wants to jump in, which I necessarily don't blame them. And again, if we had that 2% inflation rate, then our mortgage rates would probably be about 4, 5, 6%, which is the case. Now, of course, they're a lot higher. So that more than offsets the lower price you're getting.
Right, because it seems that there are houses popping up for sale around Jacoby Hospital, where this proposed just home thing is, where they say 50 prisoners detainees from Rikers Island. And the controller just put out a report yesterday that the population on Rikers Island is not going down, but it went up over the last month. There's now almost 6,000 inmates at Rikers Island, 5,940 to be exact, which is up 1%, he said. And the mental illness population is at 18%, or 1,063 people. Now, mental illness is one of the allowances to get into Just Home. Now, if they're putting 50 in and you have 1,063, where are the other 1,013 going to go? I mean, people are thinking now that more buildings will be built in Jacoby to house people as they come every year, because the Health and Hospitals Corporation has said there will be at least 50 more people every year. And the controller also said that these new jails that are being built, the borough jails, are already below capacity of what's in Rikers Island. Now, we've had no cash bail. Now there's calls for reforms, and we've had a meeting where the new assemblyman in the 80th Assembly District said that he will be going to Albany to see what needs to be done. And some of the other state legislators have said they will be going back to Albany to see how they can tweak it again, which means there'll be more people in jail in Rikers. So how are they going to do these borough jails? And these borough jails aren't going to have the facilities that Rikers has to take care of these quote unquote sick prisoners or other prisoners with other diseases that allow them to get into this Just Home program. And
well,
you have
Bob, you said a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and we went and we did a 360. But let me ask you a very simple question, because you started off by saying detainees, but then you just ended it by saying criminals. So
no, I didn't say criminals.
All right. So my question to you is, what's a detainee?
A detainee, and according to Health and Hospitals Corporation and Fortune Society, 86% of the people in Rikers are detainees. They have
but what is that?
They have been accused of committing a crime that they can't afford the bail for. All right. Now, we know that minor crimes people no longer are in jail for because of the new no cash bail law. So these are real crimes that are violent crimes that involved weapons, that involved harming people. They were major felonies. All right. Because as you know, the district attorneys aren't going to try cases anymore unless they know they can get a victory, a win on it. All right. And these are the major cases. They're being pled down to whatever.
Right. But if HAC is classifying them as detainees, then I guess HAC is saying that they're not criminals. That's a different interpretation.
Well, we haven't been able to talk to HHC. The information coming to Community Board 11 was, at the February housing meeting of Community Board 11, where they had a public hearing, answers just came a week or two ago for those questions. So they're 8 months behind in their answers. And every time they send them, it's something new.
Okay, right? But you living in that area, and I know you're involved in that conversation, and I'm sure you've read more material on it than I have. What are they? Because there's a difference between, that and a prisoner.
Well,
a prisoner, in my opinion, I'm not the law, but in my opinion, you've been accused of the crime. It's not alleged anymore. You went through a court of law and they said guilty, and they put you, and now you're a prisoner.
Right.
A holding cell, which is what I believe Rikers was originally created for, is, for lack of a better word, a detainee. It doesn't make them innocent, but it doesn't make them guilty either.
Right. But 86% of the people, according to HHC, are detainees, which means there's only 16% true criminals who have been convicted of crimes. All right. And those are basically the worst of the worst. But
so which one is HHC trying to assist? The ones that are the worst of the worst, or the other population?
They don't tell us what crimes they're going to be. They say, we can't tell you what crimes. We're just going on their medical history. And if they have as little as diabetes, and we see mental illness, they're eligible.
Bob, according to New York City public health information and of course our wonderful elected officials that specialize in the health area, right? I would say 90% of New York City citizens have some type of mental health.
Well,
right? I mean, according to HHC and all of our health experts, right? 80% of New Yorkers are fat today because they go to McDonald's.
and the ugly thing, or the stupid thing, is that sex offenders have to register. So if they're being taken out of a jail or a prison, they have to register so everybody knows where they're going to be. Okay, but they're not going to tell us that, well, we have 8 sex offenders in there out of 50. Okay, they're just going to tell us, well, we have 50 people who are medically conditioned that are allowed for this program. Okay, they're not going to break it down.
Well, you know, again, I don't know how we did the switch from Bidenomics to Just Home, but they, you know, to stay on Just Home, I guess. This is where, and then I guess try to get it back into politics. This is where 2023 will be very interesting. I can't speak for the councilwoman, Marjorie Velasquez, but I do know something is that controversial coming into that neighborhood, understanding the nature of that neighborhood, being the council person, you would want as much detail as possible, not just to make your own decisions.
Anthony, it's not only the councilwoman, Anthony. The state legislators have the power to do something.
Right.
The state can.
Talking, right. No, but you're talking
the state, even there.
Wait. You're talking just
right.
You're talking the proposal at Jacoby.
Right.
The proposal at Jacoby is being run by the city.
Doesn't matter. The state has power. The state created the Health and Hospital Corporation.
The state has said a long time ago, we leave that up to the city. As long as the city doesn't violate state rules, we're good.
Well, we don't know if they're going to violate by putting.
What do you mean we don't know? I'll tell you this online. I said this to you offline. Your perfect example, which everybody in your district should be scared of, is to come to the new, and I call it new, Bedford Park, Norwood, or as I've always called it for 30 years, Montefiore land. And I do believe, Bob, you have a new Montefiore land over in your side as well. Mm-hmm. But I do expect, because of this city program that's coming in, you're going to see Montefiore, who actually has made the model, now go all over there. You're
no,
10 years from now, unless you guys protect your neighborhood, you're worried about Jacoby having a couple of buildings. You're going to have a whole new community district.
Oh, Anthony,
Monty land.
Anthony, they've taken over the Stop and Shop, which used to be the Pathmark on Eastchester Road, and that is going to be a Montefiore building. They're going to build something there, but it's supposedly for residents, like a dormitory. Okay, it's also right next to the Metro North station that's coming in 2027. So it's a very valuable piece of property.
The community newspaper will be there about a year from now.
But what the problem is that these people at Just Home, while they're in Rikers Island and there are walls around there and they can't get out and they have prison guards at Jacoby Hospital, they'll be under the Fortune Society will be supervising them, and they will be able to roam anywhere they want, to go outside. As was said, they'll be able to take the BX12 bus, so they might wind up in your neighborhood. But then again, I'll put it to you this way. The 2 top floors of North Central Bronx Hospital is being converted to take the worst of the worst prisoners. Okay, that are medically.
No, that's not accurate.
Well, that's what's been said. That the worst.
What's written down is that they fall under the mental health category.
Right. Well,
that's not the worst of the worst.
Well, we were told
what that is.
We were told these will be fine, upstanding citizens who will be at Just Home, and Fortune Society will be supervising them.
Look, the only reason I'm refraining from there are a couple of reasons why I'm
right. Anthony, we have to
mean that if they're not listed as criminals and if they're listed as detainee, and I don't know how they're listed now, as far as the availability.
Anthony, we have to go to commercial.
I have read that, and I will admit whether they're a criminal or a detainee, I'm a little worried. I mean, I would be a little worried
Right.
about their
Let's continue this,
access.
Anthony. Let's continue this discussion after our commercial. So we're at our.
In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted, and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your product and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the websites they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our news site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voiceless.
One thing I forgot, Anthony, was that my friend, Mr. John Perez, has told me that when projects such as this comes in, there needs to be a risk assessment done on what the risk of a project like this is going to be to the neighborhood. Do you have a risk assessment yet? Okay, so HHC, Fortune Society, the city have to do a risk assessment before this project comes in on what dangers it can be to the society, to the neighborhood and the surrounding area. Now, where shall we go, Anthony? You want to do your Northwest Bronx segment, or you want me to do a segment on community boards?
No, let me do my segment now.
Okay, let's go to the Northwest Bronx segment.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are creating a Northwest Bronx segment for one reason only. Our organization represents predominantly the Northwest section of the Bronx, Fordham, Kingsbridge, Bedford Park, and Norwood, and some of the surrounding areas as well. Our average membership has been a member for about 20, 25 years, living in the area. And I want to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, an event that's happening this Saturday that I think our community is very proud of. I personally am very proud of. And if you have a chance, please stop by. On Marshall Loop Parkway, we have a wonderful World War I monument. It is on Marshall Loop Parkway between Hull Avenue and Marion Avenue. That monument is a World War I monument, or as we know it, the Victory Monument, because it honored all Bronxites, but in particular, Bedford Park and Norwood Bronxites that served in the war of World War I. Personally speaking, as most people know, I've lived in the area for about 40 years. One of my earliest memories of that monument was in my teenage years, about 1976, 1977. My family would take us to the Botanical Garden. And when we would drive by, just before you get to the garden on Marshall Parkway, you get to the monument. And there was one or two times every year that we noticed that when we drove by, there was like a ceremony taking place. Now I didn't know, being 16, 17 years old, what that was and the context of that, but I noticed there were gatherings taking place there. So of course, now moving into the neighborhood, as the neighborhood evolved, well, so did the monument. The monument over the years created a whole lot of decay. It wasn't taken care of properly, and the monument really started to look bad. So a number of organizations, and I'll mention them briefly, Norwood Against Graffiti, Bedford Marshall Loop Community Association, and our organization, Northwest Bronx Democrats, got together with then City Councilman Oliver Coppell, and asked him, which he did. He created a $1 million allotment to not just clean up the monument, but to also have it illuminated. And that was in 2009. Since then, those organizations have gone to Community Board 7 to ask them, why don't we try to create events and activities at the monument regarding Memorial Day, regarding Veterans Day? Because I found out in my research that when they put the monument there in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s, they used to have big events in regards to the monument. They used to at one time cut off Marshall Loop Parkway and would actually have a parade to go down Marshall Loop Parkway in honor of those veterans of World War I. So all of that stopped in the mid-1980s. And that's, of course, when the monument started to go downhill as far as its structure. So we kept fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. And I want to recognize, the current chair of the Community Board 7 Veterans Committee, because if it wasn't for his insistence, as well as our insistence, we are now having our first event there, albeit 14 years and 1 week late. But it's going to be a very small flagging event. We're going to have a number of small American flags. We've invited, of course, the whole neighborhood. We do recognize that it is last minute, but we think it's going to be a wonderful but small ceremony. It will be Saturday at 11 a.m. at the monument. We will have some guest speakers, and I'm sure the organizations that I've mentioned will be recognized, as well as the story of the monument. And then, of course, we want different events to happen there going forward. So to use both Memorial and Veterans Day. So I'm very personally happy to see that happening. I know a lot of the community is. I hope a lot of Bronxites are. Of course, I hope a lot of veterans. And if you have a couple of minutes on this Saturday, 11 a.m., we would love anyone and everyone to come and join. I can tell you, because I was in this meeting last night, that the ceremony itself will be no longer than an hour, and it will start at 11 o'clock. Bob, back to you.
Well, unfortunately, Anthony, there is an event in Westchester Square starting at 11 a.m. It is the Huntington Free Library event that once a year where they give out 200 turkeys they gave out last year. Developer Mark Stagg was there with State Senator Biaggi, and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez had a team there. So, it's an event that I will be attending, unfortunately, on the east side. All right. There are also city agencies, and it's an event that runs from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Now, Senator Biaggi attends. Our new state senator replacing Ms. Biaggi, who really can't do any worse than Ms. Biaggi, Natalia Fernandez, will be there. Her replacement, who really can't do any worse than she did, Mr. John Cicaro Jr., who I'm expecting really good things of, since he is very knowledgeable in the political system than most of our elected officials, will probably be there too. And I'm hoping that Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez will be there, because it seems that the Bronx needs more work from Congress, that the Bronx is still numbers, 62. And we are going nowhere. Hopefully, our new elected officials can help do something. All right, because while I did a story on Gustavo Rivera at Mount Carmel Pharmacy on East 87th Street in Belmont of their new wellness center, Gustavo, you remember Gustavo was in charge of the Not 62 program, and what happened? You remember what happened with Gustavo Rivera after Not 62?
What happened, Bob?
Gustavo lost 15 pounds on Not 62. He was in charge of that. But then about a month later, all of a sudden he gained back about 30 pounds. Mm-hmm. So, he was plus 15. So it really didn't work. But we have a guest coming on, Dion Powell, in a few moments, Anthony. He's going to call me. I'm going to put him on. We're going to see how he did in his race in his 32nd Senate district against Louis Sepulveda, and I forgot who the other person was. But I want to just say something about Community Board 11. Their meeting was last night. And, you know, we have a committed chair now of Community Board 11. He's on vacation out in the Middle East, you know, visiting the Middle East, and he called in to be a part of the meeting. All right. Now, what normal person would be calling in on their vacation from the Middle East? This is a very dedicated person, Mr. Yahi Obeid. All right. And I have good feelings about Mr. Obeid running Community Board 11. However, there are still 11 vacancies on Community Board 11. There are 50 positions that have always been filled every year, but right now there are only 39 members. As you know, I have applied to Community Board 11, and I was not placed on it. I have spoken to Borough President Gibson about that, who told me she wants the board to be more reflective of the community. Now, I don't know what that means, all right? It can only mean one thing, that people like Robert Press need not apply, okay? That's what I'm getting out of that, because we're now at the third meeting of the community board passed, and she has those 11 vacancies still open. As a matter of fact, one of those 11 people left during this 3 months to become an employee of Assemblywoman Natalia Fernandez, soon to be State Senator Natalia Fernandez. So there is at least one vacancy that should be filled if she's not going to fill all 11. All right. Now, I can't see where she's going to get a better trained person. There are problems on that community board that I know, and I've been helping the board the past 2 years with advice from my days on Community Board 8. There are problems with the Ethics Committee. I was a valued member of the Ethics Committee on Community Board 8. I'm not going to go into all my experience here. We don't have enough time. I would like to see, Anthony, can you get the masked wrestler, the masked announcer to give us a little details before Dion comes on about the upcoming wrestling pay-per-views?
I'll try to be brief, and feel free to jump in.
I don't see the mask. Where's the mask?
Well, first and foremost, and I apologize to have to do this to you. I saw it at the last minute. I have to slightly correct you on your promotion. The AEW event is this weekend. The Survivor Series is next weekend.
Oh, pardon me.
No, just to clarify that. Now, in regards to AEW, I think it's going to be a fascinating.
Wait a minute. Tell the people your experience, though, why you're the expert on wrestling.
Well, thank you for saying I'm an expert. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not an expert, but to mention some short disclosure, as I mentioned, I have many lives. Well, from the mid-1990s to about the mid-2000s, one thing I did was I was also a wrestling writer. So the wrestling magazines of the old days, the hardcover ones of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 1980s, turned into the internet newspapers of the 90s, 2000s, and even as far as today. So I worked for OneWrestling.com under the leadership of Bill Lappner. That if you're into wrestling, people know who Bill Lappner is. And I got it all from being a love of wrestling. One of my favorite wrestlers, I mean, everybody would say Bruno during my days, and he was one of them, but my favorite one was Chief Jay Strongbow. So so getting that job, I was sort of a kid in a candy cane store. So I can tell you a lot of the inside and outside. Put that out there as a disclosure as we go on. Okay.
Now, wait a minute, Anthony. Do you think, before you go into the pay-per-views, do you think that Chief Jay Strongbow could be a wrestler today, as we see what's happening in baseball and football?
Wow, good question. I would say the answer to that is no. And probably the best way to answer that was you saw that in the late 1990s when they tried to bring back a wrestler by the name of Tatanka. When he first, came in as sort of being the Chief Jay Strongbow replacement, for lack of a better word, he was well received at first. If he got booed, it was only because he was green around the gills and he wasn't a great wrestler. But he became one. But then when they brought them back in the late 1990s, of course during the Attitude Era, it looked like a joke. It looked like a joke. And to one extent, that's a sad note on wrestling if you're a true wrestling historian like I am. But in today's wrestling world, I don't know if you can get over with that long. Short term as a short term gimmick, yeah, there's some cute things you could do with that.
Okay, so who's going to win the AEW tomorrow night?
Well, I'm not going to tell you who, as of this moment, might win, but I will tell you I think it's a great card. It's a stacked card. And what I think Tony Khan, the owner, is going to attempt to do is a variety of different things. His agenda going forward is really three things. And a lot of people don't know this, but his first priority, believe it or not, is he wants to get a Ring of Honor jump. So he's in discussions with his current provider that actually might, on an experimental basis, try Ring of Honor as a weekly program. Now, of course, to do that, you would want to presume you would want to keep Chris Jericho as the champion. But that's Tony Khan's first objective. Second objective is he wants to clean himself from all that fallout scum that CM Punk created. He wants to create a whole new scenario. And he's going to try to do that in two different ways. Number one, he's bringing back the Young Bucks and he's bringing back Kenny Omega. I think this trios thing, how do I put it? As a wrestling fan, I'm not a big fan of it, but I do understand there's a younger generation, and a younger generation does like it. And if you're into Lucha Libre, which I am, there's a very big segment for that. So I do believe Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks could fit into that role. And Tony Khan, his plans a year ago was to actually create that division then and build it up then. So I think, that's going to be a second objective. And to piggyback off of that, well, how do you clean up from CM Punk? You clean up from CM Punk by having, and again, I want to be careful, I don't want to cross any boundaries here, by having someone that can carry the load. Now, Jon Moxley carrying the load, no problem. I think he deserves a ton of credit, especially now, because what most people don't know, and here goes your tip for the day, is that Jon Moxley was scheduled that night that CM Punk won to go on vacation. It was signed, sealed, and delivered. And then when CM Punk had that fallout, Tony Khan went to Jon and said, please cancel your vacation. He did. And he carried it as a transitional champion till today. And I think most people would say he's done a great job. But Jon still wants to go on vacation. And he probably deserves that and a little bit more now.
So would that mean that MJF might win tomorrow night?
I would say that MJF, who is a phenomenal wrestler, forget all of this. He's a phenomenal wrestler. I would say the odds look good. I'm not, again, I don't want to cross any lines. I would say both can carry the load. It wouldn't surprise me if Jon does win and then they have a rematch and MJF wins and then he goes on vacation and then you can turn it into a trilogy. I do know, and this much I will say, that there are up to 3 options currently on the AEW creative board table. That much I'll say. So there's a variety of different ways they can go. But I would say, in my humble opinion, I think Jon might be ready for vacation now.
And how long will Roman Reigns keep his title?
Well, that's a bigger question. As I told you offline, what seems to be happening is that I guess he's going to have it a little bit longer because this Sami Zayn angle, which I got to tell you, I'm not a fan of at all. But again, I defer to the younger generation, and it seems like the ratings seem to show that the younger generation likes this, bloodline thing with Sami Zayn. And again, to let the audience know, I'll give you a little inside baseball. Don't be surprised, ladies and gentlemen, in a couple of weeks if you see the Uzi T-shirts come out, because that's what's being created now with different colors and different sizes, and that's just an indication to me that Triple H, who by the way wasn't a big fan of it either. I'll tell you that little inside baseball. His position was, we'll throw it out there and see where it goes, but he didn't think it was going to really go. Well, according to the ratings, it's going. So to answer your original question, you're going to see Roman Reigns probably do some, like he's doing now with Survivors, the family thing, to have Sami Zayn involved. Now, how that plays out, that's a much longer story, because if Sami Zayn can get them to WrestleMania and him still being a member of the bloodline at WrestleMania, I think.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I have Dion Powell on the phone right now.
Uncle Dion.
Can we hear Dion? Can you hear him?
Hello.
You want to say something, Dion?
Yes, I can say that post-election is very disappointing. Came close, but there's a lot more dark underbelly that I'll exclusively tell on the show another time. But things look hopeful. 23 and 23 is off the ground. The 501c4 is registered. The Met count's open. So if you know anybody that's been fired because of the mandate, or interested in running for city council next year because they took your job and now you want to take theirs, let Dion know.
Dion's trying to promote himself, Anthony, for the city council.
I don't know. Obviously you can hear him because you have the phone, but he's coming in echo-ish. But what is he doing? Promoting his services?
Did you hear Anthony, Dion?
Yes, but he didn't hear me, obviously. But it's okay. I recently posted.
No, Dion. I'm being very frank with you. Number one, you're on a telephone, so I don't even see you. And number two, you're on Bob's phone. You're not on a centralized phone where we all can hear you. So right now you're coming in very echo-ish.
Well, once again, Mr. Press's technology and sense of media production isn't where it should be. How's that sound?
Well, he should be calling into the studio, Anthony. And
How do I do this? That never works.
Right, that's what happens, unfortunately. So, Dion, please tell us how the election went, because you ran for 32nd Senate District.
It went horrible. These people are zombies. But just to let you know, I did a stealth attack that I'm sure that the incumbent didn't appreciate. Whereas a lot of people from the community and beyond told me they voted for me out of the 500 etc. votes. However, that's just a mosquito bite to poke the bear. In the meantime, I got to focus on city council next year. Here's what I'm doing. However, the GOP and independent candidates have picked up a few seats statewide for state senate and assembly. A few Democrats are conceding.
That's in Brooklyn, Dion. They picked up 5 assembly seats in Brooklyn, or rather 4 in Brooklyn, 1 in Staten Island.
Right. And now in the Bronx, next year's city council races should be interesting. However, we have a new assembly person and a new state senator, which I'm sure you both supported.
I'm neutral, Dion, so I'm in the media. That's why, I see our producer has taken off the word targeted, so maybe I can rip this up. I'm no longer targeted according to our producer.
Okay, well, hopefully it's ripping up in the air.
No, Dion, I spent most of the early voting in one poll site, and the coordinators there didn't want me in that site because there's allegations of certain things going on, and I can't say anything because I can't back it up yet. And from what I'm told, there were federal agents in several poll sites throughout the city. Okay.
Well, it was a close race, and there was lots of shenanigans. But I want to give a plug out to the New York Citizen Audit, which has all that.
Explain to us how you got 2%.
To expose the corruption.
Anthony wants to know how you got 2%, but I saw it was 1.87%, I believe.
I did nothing. I didn't even lift a finger. So that's my answer.
So how much
So
did
you
you?
ran for office and didn't do anything.
But how much did you spend in total on the office?
0.
You didn't spend a penny?
No.
You didn't, no bus fare to go anywhere to speak or anything?
If I did check campaign finance.
No, I know under $1,000 you don't have to file, but I'm sure you spent at least $20 or $30 even.
No, I didn't, my friend. It was all just by name on the paper. Remember, I told you they knocked me off the ballot for the primary because the district lines changed at the end of May, and I saw the 32nd State Senate district is now Black, African-American, African votes predominantly. So the incumbent did his job with his team and knocked me off. But thanks to the Conservative Party and Pat McManus, I was still on the ballot. And as you can see, without even lifting a finger, 500 plus people believed in me and was so disgusted with the young, they shaded in that bubble in the third column.
But Dion, I ran against Jeffrey Dinowitz for an assembly seat, which is much smaller than a state Senate seat. And you got what, 517 votes?
How many votes did you get, sir?
I got 580 votes in a small assembly seat. And you know,
how much did you spend?
$10.
Well, it looks like you got more bang for your buck.
Right. And it was a smaller seat. So, you know, Dion, if we compare, you actually got only 1%. All right. And Senator Sepulveda,
oh, God.
I mean, you know, he's got now a district that he feels he can really work in. Okay.
Well, guess what? I got news for you. The Dominicans are coming after him. Even his princess that he made, Cardenas Reyes, has turned on him. So the Dominicans are turning on him. Let's see if he crawls back into black hands. The Boricua connection.
As far as Cardenas Reyes, okay, I challenged a petition. It had fraud on it. Okay. And I knocked off 2,000 of 3,000 signatures. And we had out and out fraud on that petition. All right. So I'm going to tell you this, Dion. I may step aside for a few weeks just to challenge petitions. Okay. And that's probably why the target's on my head. Whoops. Where is it? Okay. So because I'm going to tell you this, I'm going to make sure in certain council races that the right people are on the ballot. Okay. And Dion, any final words because we're at our end of our show?
Yes, stay tuned for Mr. Roger Compass in the future, discussing more of the control wholly possible situation exclusively with County Commitment Dion Powell.
Yes, we want that on. And Anthony, any final words because we have to go?
I want to wish everybody a wonderful weekend. And again, Saturday, 11 a.m., if you have a few moments, come say hi to Bedford Park, Norwood, and Bronx sites at the Victory of World War I Memorial.
Okay, thank you for viewing, and we'll see you next week.
In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted, and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace